Imagine a room where no light enters. Curtains sealed with tape. Tissue boxes stacked in perfect rows. A man sitting in the darkness, not speaking, not moving. This room is in one of the most expensive hotels in America. The man inside? He was once the richest person in the country. He owned airlines. He made Hollywood movies. He dated the most beautiful actresses in the world. He broke world records flying planes faster than anyone alive. But now, in this room, he weighs less than 90 pounds. His hair and nails have grown so long, he looks unrecognizable. And he hasn't spoken to anyone in almost 3 years. His name was Howard Hughes. And this is the story of how the most powerful man in America became a prisoner of his own mind. A story of genius, obsession, and a tragic descent into madness that no amount of money could stop. To understand Howard Hughes, you have to understand the America he was born into. The year was 1905, December 24th, Christmas Eve. It was the age of oil, steel, and new money. Families were becoming rich overnight, building empires that would last generations. America was transforming from farmland to industrial powerhouse, and fortunes were being made faster than ever before in history. Howard's father, Howard Hughes Sr., was one of these men. He wasn't born rich. He was a lawyer from Missouri who saw an opportunity that everyone else missed. Oil companies were drilling deeper into the earth, but their drill bits kept breaking on hard rock. It was costing them millions. Howard Sr. invented something simple but revolutionary. A drill bit with 2 rotating cones covered in hard steel teeth. It could cut through rock that no other drill could penetrate. He called it the Hughes rock bit. Oil companies needed it desperately. And Howard Sr. became a millionaire almost instantly. Within 5 years, he owned one of the most profitable tool companies in America. But young Howard, the son, he wasn't interested in his father's business. Not at first. He was a strange kid, quiet, obsessive about details. He was obsessed with 2 things, movies and machines. At age 11, he built Houston's first radio transmitter in his bedroom. His mother thought he was wasting time. At 12, he built a motorized bicycle from spare parts he found in junkyards. At 14, he took flying lessons without telling his parents. Teachers said he had the mind of an engineer, but the imagination of an artist. He didn't fit anywhere. Rich kids thought he was weird. Smart kids thought he was arrogant. He spent most of his time alone, building things, dreaming about Hollywood and flying. Then, in 1922, everything changed. Howard's mother, Aline, died suddenly from complications after surgery. She was only 39 years old. Howard was 16, and he was devastated. He had been extremely close to her. She was protective, some say overprotective. She worried constantly about germs, about diseases, about Howard getting sick. And those fears, they were passed down to him. 2 years later, another tragedy. His father died of a heart attack during a business meeting. Howard Hughes Sr. was 54. He left behind a company worth millions and a son who was only 18 years old. Most teenagers would panic. Most would let lawyers and executives handle everything. Howard didn't. He walked into the company boardroom 3 days after the funeral, full of older men in suits who thought they could control this kid, and he said something shocking. "I want full control of this company, or I'm selling everything and walking away." They laughed at him. One executive said, "Son, you don't know anything about running a business." Howard looked at him and said, "Then teach me, or get out." They didn't take him seriously. So Howard did something ruthless. He hired lawyers and found a legal loophole. Texas law said he was too young to inherit, but it also said he could be declared a legal adult if he could prove competence. Within weeks, he convinced a judge. Then he systematically bought out every single relative, every investor, every board member who questioned him, until he owned 100% of Hughes Tool Company. He was 19 years old, a legal adult by court order, and he was answering to no one. The company was generating $2 million a year in profit, equivalent to about $35 million today. And Howard had a plan that nobody expected. He told his executives, "You run the company. Send me the profits. I'm moving to Los Angeles." They asked why. He said, "I'm going to make movies." Now here's where most rich kids would just enjoy their money. Buy cars, throw parties, marry a socialite, live easy. Howard Hughes did the opposite. He moved to Los Angeles in 1925 with his young wife, Ella Rice, and told everyone in Hollywood he was going to be a filmmaker. Hollywood laughed at him. "Rich boy playing director," they said behind his back. The studio executives, the established directors, they all dismissed him. Another millionaire's son with a hobby. His first film, Swell Hogan, was never even released. It was so bad that Howard bought all the prints and destroyed them himself. He didn't want anyone to see his failure. His second film, Everybody's Acting, lost money. Critics destroyed it. Audiences didn't care. But Howard didn't quit. He studied. He watched other directors. He learned about lighting, about camera angles, about editing. And he spent money. Lots of money. His third film was called 2 Arabian Nights. He poured his inheritance into it. And it worked. The film won an Academy Award for Best Director of a Comedy Picture in 1928. But that wasn't enough for Howard. He wanted to make something bigger than anything Hollywood had ever seen. He wanted to make a war film about World War I pilots, with real planes, real stunts, and real danger. He called it Hell's Angels. The budget was supposed to be $2 million. Howard spent $4 million, then $5 million, then it kept going. He hired 137 pilots. He bought 87 vintage World War I aircraft from around the world. He employed 2,000 people. He built an entire airport just for the production. When the director, Marshall Nealon, said a scene was too dangerous to film, Howard fired him and directed the film himself, even though he had almost no directing experience. When his lead actress, Greta Nissen, had a thick Norwegian accent that didn't work for talking pictures, Howard scrapped all her scenes and reshot them with a new actress, a young unknown named Jean Harlow. It added another year to production and another $1 million. But here's the crazy part. One day during filming, Howard needed a dangerous aerial stunt, a spiral dive that could easily kill the pilot if done wrong. The professional stunt pilot, who had done dozens of dangerous stunts, looked at the plane, looked at the weather conditions, and said, "Mr. Hughes, this is too risky. I'm not doing it." Howard looked at him for a moment, then said, "Fine, I'll do it myself." His crew thought he was joking. He wasn't. Howard Hughes, a millionaire who could hire anyone, got into the plane himself, took off, and attempted the stunt. And he crashed. The plane went into an uncontrolled spin and smashed into the ground. His crew ran to the wreckage, expecting to find him dead. Howard was unconscious, blood pouring from his head, skull fracture, crushed cheekbone. His face was destroyed. Doctors said he'd never look the same, that he'd have permanent damage, that he might not survive the night. He spent weeks in the hospital. The moment he could walk, the moment doctors cleared him, he went back to the set and finished the film. Hell's Angels premiered in 1930. It made $8 million at the box office, a massive hit. Suddenly, Hollywood wasn't laughing at Howard Hughes anymore. They were afraid of him because they realized something. This man would risk his own life for perfection. This man had no limits, and that made him dangerous. But movies, as successful as they were just a hobby for Howard, a way to be famous, to meet beautiful women, to prove he could succeed in Hollywood. His real obsession, his true passion, was speed, flying, breaking records, pushing machines beyond what anyone thought possible. In the 1930s, aviation was still new. The Wright brothers had only flown 30 years earlier. Most planes were slow, dangerous, unreliable. Howard saw potential that nobody else did. He believed planes could be faster, sleeker, more efficient. So he decided to build his own. In 1932, he founded Hughes Aircraft Company, not to make money, but to build the fastest plane in the world. He hired the best engineers. He gave them unlimited budgets. And he told them, "I don't care how much it costs. Make it perfect." 3 years later, in 1935, the H-1 Racer was finished. It was beautiful, silver, streamlined, radical in design. It had retractable landing gear, something uncommon at the time. It had flush rivets to reduce drag. Every detail was obsessed over. And Howard, of course, insisted on test flying it himself. On September 13, 1935, he took the H-1 up over Santa Ana, California. He pushed it faster and faster. The plane shook violently. His crew on the ground thought it would break apart. But Howard kept pushing. 352 miles per hour. A new world speed record. He landed, and the world went crazy. Newspapers called him the fastest man alive. Parades were organized. He was a national hero. But Howard wasn't satisfied. Records were made to be broken, he said, so he kept going. In 1937, he flew from Los Angeles to New York in 7 hours and 28 minutes, breaking the transcontinental speed record. People were stunned. That same trip used to take days. Then, in 1938, Howard announced something audacious. He was going to fly around the entire world, not just across the ocean, around the whole planet. And he was going to do it faster than anyone ever had. Most people thought he was insane. The previous record was over 186 hours. Planes broke down constantly. Navigation was difficult. Weather was unpredictable. It was a death wish. Howard didn't care. On July 10, 1938, he took off from New York in a Lockheed Super Electra with a crew of 4. He flew to Paris, then Moscow, then across Siberia, then to Alaska, and back to New York. 91 hours. 3 days and 19 hours. He shattered the record by almost 4 days. When he landed, over 25,000 people were waiting at the airport. The crowd was so massive that police couldn't control it. People rushed the plane. They wanted to touch him, to see the man who flew around the world. New York threw him a ticker tape parade. Over 1 million people lined the streets. President Franklin Roosevelt invited him to the White House and called him an American hero. Howard Hughes, at 33 years old, was the most famous man in America. And he was dating Katharine Hepburn, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. She was brilliant, independent, strong-willed. For a brief time, they seemed perfect together. They flew planes together. They talked about movies, about life. Some say she was the only woman who ever truly understood him. But Howard's obsessions were growing. He was designing planes for the military now. The U.S. government wanted faster reconnaissance aircraft, better bombers, innovative designs. And Howard promised them the impossible. He also bought Trans World Airlines, TWA. It was a struggling airline, but Howard saw potential. He redesigned their planes, making them faster and more comfortable. He created the Constellation, one of the most beautiful aircraft ever built. TWA became one of the most successful airlines in America, and Howard controlled it all. From the outside, his life looked perfect. Wealth, fame, beautiful women, success in multiple industries. But inside Howard's mind, something was starting to break. The obsessions that made him successful were becoming something darker. See, Howard had always been different. Even as a child, he had rituals that his mother encouraged. He would wash his hands repeatedly. He would avoid shaking hands with people. He would count things over and over to make sure they were correct. He needed everything in perfect order, perfect alignment. When he was young and successful, people called it attention to detail, or perfectionism. Hollywood admired it. His engineers respected it. But as the pressure grew, as his business empire expanded, as he took on more responsibility, these habits became worse. Much worse. By the 1940s, Howard was working on multiple military contracts. The U.S. was entering World War II, and the government needed planes desperately. Howard promised them revolutionary aircraft. The D-2, a bomber that could fly higher and faster than anything else. The XF-11, a reconnaissance plane that could spy on enemies from incredible distances. But Howard's perfectionism was causing massive delays. He would redesign parts over and over. He would reject materials because they weren't exactly right. He would spend weeks obsessing over a single component while deadlines passed. The military was getting furious. Millions of dollars were being spent, and Howard wasn't delivering. The pressure was crushing him. He stopped sleeping normally. He would work for 48 hours straight, then crash for a day. He started losing weight. His staff noticed he was becoming paranoid, convinced that people were stealing his designs, that competitors were spying on him. Then came July 7, 1946, the day everything changed. Howard was testing the XF-11 prototype himself. The military had been waiting years for this plane. It was supposed to be the fastest reconnaissance aircraft ever built, capable of flying at high altitudes and taking detailed photographs of enemy territory. Howard took off from Culver City, California, in the early evening. The flight was supposed to be a simple test, just a few maneuvers to check the controls. But something went wrong. One of the propellers malfunctioned. The rear control mechanism failed. The plane started losing altitude rapidly. Howard was flying over Beverly Hills, one of the most crowded, wealthy neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Below him were houses, mansions, families having dinner. If he crashed there, he would kill dozens of people. In those final seconds, with the plane spinning out of control, Howard made a decision. Instead of trying to save himself by aiming for an open area that might have been too far, he fought the controls and steered the plane away from the houses. He aimed for an empty lot between two homes. The plane hit the ground at over 90 miles per hour. It exploded into flames. The impact was so violent that wreckage scattered across the neighborhood. Fire erupted instantly. The heat was so intense that nearby houses started burning. A young Marine sergeant named William Lloyd Durkin was driving by. He saw the crash and ran toward the flames without thinking. He could hear someone screaming inside the wreckage. He pulled Howard Hughes out of the burning plane just before it exploded completely. Howard was unrecognizable. His chest was crushed, ribs shattered. His left lung was punctured and collapsed. Third-degree burns covered his arms and back. His heart was pushed against his spine from the impact. Doctors at Good Samaritan Hospital said he had less than an hour to live. But Howard Hughes survived. Barely. He spent months in the hospital in unbearable pain. Every breath hurt. Every movement was agony. And the doctors, not knowing what else to do, gave him morphine. Lots of it, codeine, painkillers by the bottle. And Howard, who always needed control over everything, who obsessed over every detail, became addicted. The pain never fully went away. His body never fully healed. And the drugs, they made the obsessions worse. Much, much worse. After the crash, Howard was never the same. Physically, mentally, emotionally, something broke inside him that never healed. The injuries left him in constant pain. His ribs didn't set properly. His lung never fully recovered. He couldn't stand up straight. And the painkillers he took to survive became the chains that imprisoned him. He started making strange rules for everyone around him. At first, they seemed like the quirks of a perfectionist, but they quickly became something far more disturbing. His employees had to follow written instructions for everything. How to open a door without contaminating the handle. How to hand him a glass of water without their fingers touching the glass. how to serve him food on plates that had been wrapped in tissue paper and sealed. He became terrified of germs, convinced that any contact with the outside world could kill him. He would write memos that were 30, 40, sometimes 50 pages long about how someone should open a can of peaches. First, wash the can with soap and hot water, then rinse it, then wash it again, then dry it with a clean towel, then sterilize the can opener by boiling it, then put on gloves, then open the can, but don't let the metal edge touch the fruit inside. His staff thought he was losing his mind, but they couldn't say anything. Howard paid them enormous salaries, sometimes $100,000 a year in 1950s money, equivalent to over $1 million today. Their only job was to follow his instructions exactly, no matter how insane they seemed. And if they questioned him, if they suggested his rules were unnecessary, they were fired immediately. Meanwhile, his business empire was collapsing around him. TWA was losing money to competitors. Pan Am was taking over international routes. American Airlines was dominating domestic travel. Howard's decision-making became erratic. He would make billion-dollar decisions in the middle of the night based on nothing. He would cancel orders, then reinstate them, then cancel them again. The board of directors tried to remove him. Shareholders sued him. The government investigated him for mismanagement of military contracts. But Howard owned everything personally. Nobody could force him out. He stopped going to meetings. He stopped seeing his executives face to face. He would stay locked in screening rooms for days at a time, watching movies over and over. The same movie 50 times, 100 times in a row. Ice Station Zebra, a Cold War film, became an obsession. He would watch it on repeat for weeks. He would sit naked in a leather chair because he believed clothes carried germs from the outside world. He would urinate in bottles and line them up in perfect rows because he didn't want to use a contaminated bathroom. He stopped cutting his hair and nails because he didn't trust anyone to touch him with scissors. The man who once flew around the world, who dated Katharine Hepburn and Ava Gardner, who broke every record and built Hollywood's most expensive films, was now hiding from life itself. He was disappearing into his own mind, and nobody could reach him. In 1966, Howard Hughes did something that shocked everyone who knew him. On Thanksgiving night, in complete secrecy, he checked into the Desert Inn Hotel in Las Vegas. He booked the entire top 2 floors, the 8th and 9th floors. And then he never left. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The hotel management was getting frustrated. They had reserved those floors for high roller gamblers during the busy Christmas season. They wanted their rooms back. They sent messages to Howard. He ignored them. So the hotel owners threatened to evict him physically. They were going to break down the doors and remove him by force. Howard's response was simple. He bought the entire hotel for $13.2 million. Then, just to make a point, he bought 5 more casinos on the Las Vegas Strip, the Sands, the Frontier, the Silver Slipper, the Landmark, the Castaways. Howard Hughes owned a significant portion of Las Vegas, and he never stepped outside to see any of it. His employees would deliver food to his door 3 times a day, following the obsessive instructions. The food had to be prepared in a specific kitchen. It had to be wrapped in multiple layers. It had to be delivered by a specific person wearing gloves. But Howard barely ate anymore. His weight dropped to under 90 pounds on a 6'4" frame. He was completely addicted to codeine and morphine now. His personal doctors, who were supposed to help him, had become nothing more than drug dealers in white coats. They gave him whatever he wanted because saying no to Howard Hughes meant losing a $200,000 a year job. His appearance became horrifying. His hair grew down past his shoulders, wild and tangled. His beard grew long and unkempt. His fingernails grew several inches long, curling and yellowing. He looked like a corpse that was somehow still breathing. He would sit in his chair, naked, staring at the wall, not speaking for days, sometimes weeks at a time. His aides said that sometimes they were unsure if he was awake or in some kind of trance. The only time he showed any interest in anything was when a movie was playing. In 1970, Howard suddenly left Las Vegas in the middle of the night. His aides carried him out on a stretcher, covered in blankets so nobody would see him. They put him on a private jet. Nobody knew where he was going. For years, people wondered if Howard Hughes was even still alive. He moved from hotel to hotel like a ghost. Bahamas, Nicaragua, Mexico, Canada. Always the top floor. Always in darkness. Always alone. His business empire was now run entirely by a group of men he called his Mormon Mafia, because Howard only trusted Mormon employees. He believed they were honest, that they wouldn't drink or do drugs, that they would follow orders. He communicated with them only through handwritten notes passed under the door. But even these notes became incoherent. Sometimes they made no sense. Sometimes they were just instructions about movies he wanted to watch. Sometimes they were business decisions worth hundreds of millions of dollars, written in shaky, nearly illegible handwriting at 3 in the morning. On April 5, 1976, Howard Hughes was being transported on a private jet from Acapulco, Mexico to Houston, Texas. His aides told the flight crew that he needed urgent medical care, that he had to get to a hospital. But everyone knew it was too late. Somewhere over the southern United States, at 1:27 p.m., Howard Hughes died. He was 70 years old. He weighed 90 pounds. His body was so emaciated, so destroyed by years of drug abuse and self-neglect, that when they landed in Houston, the medical examiner had to use his fingerprints to confirm his identity. Nobody could recognize him by looking at him. The news shocked the world. Howard Hughes, the myth, the legend, the man everyone thought was already dead, was actually gone. And then the chaos began. He left no clear will, no instructions, no plan for his billions. Dozens of people came forward claiming they were relatives, or that Howard had promised them money, or that they had a secret will. Fake documents appeared everywhere. One man claimed Howard had left him $156 million for driving him through the Nevada desert once in 1968. It took courts almost a decade to sort through the lies. In the end, most of his estate went to the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, which today funds billions in medical research. His Hughes Aircraft Company was sold and became a major defense contractor. TWA was sold off in pieces. His legacy became institutions and corporations, not people. The richest man in America died alone, in silence, in the dark. His last years were not filled with the roar of engines, or the applause of audiences, or the love of the women who once adored him. They were filled with nothing, just the sound of a film projector playing the same movie over and over again. Howard Hughes never got to tell his side of the story. He stopped talking years before he died, and the world moved on without him, remembering the legend, but forgetting the man who suffered in silence until there was nothing left.